Hi, friends of Rouxbe. I'm Fran Costigan, the director of vegan pastry at the Rouxbe Online Culinary School, as many of you know, I suspect, and I co-created the 90-day Essential Vegan Desserts course. And it is my pleasure to be here with you today. I will say that I'm coming to you from Philadelphia. It is October 22nd, and the weather it's 84 degrees Fahrenheit. It's unbelievable. So I went out yesterday, or no, yesterday was hot too, but I went out and I bought squashes and loads of apples, which are over my shoulder. And now it's really not okay. I happen to love summer, but it's time for it to go away. So some of the desserts that we're going to talk about today will be appropriate for this time of the year, any time of the year. Everything is mix and match. I think this is a very interesting topic to me. Lower fat, no fat desserts. I want to just remind people of a couple of things, and I want to welcome everyone, guests, Rouxbe students, current Rouxbe students and graduates and guests. Everyone's welcome. And let me just tell you now that if you want to reach me at any time after the event, just write to fran@rouxbe.com and I'll be very happy to answer your email, to say hello or to answer a question. On the right side of your screen, there's an area to put a question in if you haven't done so already. I may ask a follow-up question to your question, and you can just type in, a little more information for me if you like. I've got a couple of links in the chat as well. And I want to remind my Essential Vegan Dessert students who are doing really beautifully, absolutely beautifully, that you can, again, write to me at fran@rouxbe.com, join the Facebook group if you haven't already done so, for Essential Vegan Desserts students, both current students and past students, graduates. Stay in the loop. If you're on Instagram, follow Rouxbe Plants, @Rouxbe Plants, and hashtag Essential Vegan Desserts, and we'll be able to find each other. Should you have a problem uploading your homework, for example, or any photos or any kind of technical difficulty, that's the time to write to support@rouxbe.com, and someone from the team will get back to you very quickly. So let's dig into this topic of lower fat, no fat desserts. Now, this got me thinking about what is the definition of a dessert. So I went and found it. I'm going to read it. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, dessert is usually a sweet course or dish, as of pastry or ice cream, usually served at the end of the meal. Goes on to say, a granola bar, meanwhile, is defined as a bar made of a mixture of oats and other ingredients, brown sugar, raisins, coconut, or nuts, that's eaten as a snack. I find that doesn't match my definition of a dessert. I think maybe it's even a little bit old-fashioned. People use the term dessert. Oh, this is a dessert that I had for breakfast because it wasn't very sweet. And, if I make a bar or a ball, date, nuts, whatever that, is together like a truffle or a granola bar, depending on the ingredients, to me, that can be dessert as well. So there are a number of desserts that qualify in my mind, and I'd like to hear what you have to say, as lower fat or no fat desserts. That business of no fat, there is fat in everything. There's fat in lettuce. So we're really talking about, when I say no fat desserts, no added oil, is the way I would look at it. And my friend and colleague, Char Nolan, who may have graded some of your papers, she really understands the no fat food, savory food, and desserts. But let's get to it. you know, I categorize, well, you don't know, but I'm going to tell you, I categorize desserts into simple, not too sweet, and then special occasion desserts. Now, I'm a person that happens to like a crunch after a meal. To me, a bit of dessert is like an exclamation point or a period after my meal. And so I tend to want something crunchy, and it might be a small crunchy cookie or a a truffle that's got some cacao nibs on it, something with a crunch, and then I feel like, okay, I'm finished now. I eat cake and I eat pies and tarts. The way that I do it is I serve much smaller pieces. I fill out the plate with fruit, and I tend not to like to have a slice of cake or pie. I'm trying to think of other desserts, or big or small bowl of pudding, for example, after a meal. I prefer to have this small cookie or something crunchy for me, and then have a bigger dessert, or what we think of as dessert, as a cake, for example, at another time. So I sent a couple of photos to Patrick to show you what I would call lower fat and no fat desserts. So I have a couple of photos that will be coming up on your screen. The first one is what we call in essential vegan desserts, fruit soup and salad. It's basically a sugar-free juice, whether juiced from the fruit or bottled. And it's set very lightly with agar powder or agar flakes. Now, in the course, we talk a lot about agar because it is a foundational ingredient. We don't use gelatin in making vegan desserts. That is the collagen of its bones and skin, and collagen of an animal. It's bovine gelatin. So I use agar. And we spend quite a bit of time talking about how to use it so that it works. Well, I love this dessert. It's pretty. It can be made to look really fancy. And you can do this seasonally. The photo you just saw was one that a student uploaded. This time of the year, I just found cranberries in the market. Despite the temperature, it's that time of the year. Pear and cranberry salad, or a pear cranberry gel, is really lovely. You can serve it with a cream if you want. If you're looking to keep your fat at a minimum, then you don't need the cream. In the spring, I love to do the blueberry based soup. And in the winter, a spiced apple cider, maybe with some chopped chestnuts and sesame seeds, maybe even some black sesame seeds, would be really nice. So the next photo that we can look at is also a gel, but this one is done using a combination of agar with a starch slurry. In this case, it's arrowroot. And the combination adds a creaminess. So this is another foundational technique, something that is very important to learn how to do when you're making vegan desserts, because this is a way to gel and cream. And there are a lot of applications for that. If you don't have arrowroot, you can do the slurry using cornstarch, organic cornstarch, so that it's not genetically modified. And recently I had a student tell me that my chocolate pudding, for example, cannot use arrowroot. You have to use cornstarch. Arrowroot would make it stringy. She can't use cornstarch, and she used, what'd she tell me? She used potato starch slurry. A slurry means mixing one of these starches with water before you add it in. So that's something that you can do as well. And then the next one is what I call the fancy gel. And this was, if I remember right, it's an agar gel that was a chocolate vodka, but of course it can be chocolate gel. It can be anything you want. And while agar gels will set up at room temperature, unlike bovine gelatin, and they can also be melted down and adjusted, unlike bovine gelatin, but we put these, the pretty verine into a dish, a bowl, if I remember right, that had lentils and held them on an angle. So it's really pretty, and you could add a cream to that if you wanted to, a crunchy element, or not. And then the last photo I want to show you is a watermelon granita. And this is a photo from my book, Vegan Chocolate, where a granita is a liquid base. It's usually a fruit juice. It can be chocolate. Coffee granita, lemon granita are very traditional. And then while it's in the freezer, you scrape a few times. And here the little chocolate chips, or I think they were cacao nibs, represent the chocolate, the watermelon seeds. So those are the photos that I have to show you. And I want to talk to you. I want to show you a couple of things that I pulled out to show you what we can do, or what I consider to be lower fat, no fat dessert. So let me pull this over. So this is a baked apple, as you can see, or I hope you can see. Yes, it's a big, beautiful apple. I cored it, and then I took extra apple out, and then I chopped some of the apple that came out of the whole apple and added it back in with some raisins. I used raisins and a little bit of date syrup, which is also called Ceylon. And then I actually baked the apple in a dish with a little bit of water. And I had a couple of grapes left, so I put the grapes in, because roasting fruit is another nice touch. And then when it was all done, I didn't bake the apples with the nuts, but I've got walnuts and pistachio nuts in there and some sesame seeds. So, the nuts add some health benefits and some protein. Sesame seed is high in calcium. That's a dessert I would really like to have. I like to serve it warm. If you are okay with a little more fat, you could add a cream. I don't think it's necessary, but I think this is a lovely dessert. And don't forget, you can also poach pears. This, or grill a peach, any fruit. And these are, of course, naturally gluten-free. Something else that I did, if you want to have something, let's say, more special occasion, dessert light with a little chocolate, I have on this plate, this is a date half, a Majol date half. I pitted it. I looked inside, because sometimes, every once in a while, you'll see one that's got black inside, and that's mold. And I stuffed it with walnuts, a couple of walnut halves, which is healthy, and dipped it into chocolate ganache. I did the same thing here. We actually have an assignment in Essential Vegan Desserts. This is a bit of mango with chocolate. And this is an apricot. And it's dark because I use sulfite-free fruit. And here, this is where Char Nolan always laughs, or she laughs, she likes it. But this is a truffle. And this particular truffle is made with ganache. So ganache is typically a proportion of heavy cream and chocolate. And depending on the use, if you're doing a glaze, is different if you're from making a truffle. But I use a high percentage chocolate. There is fat in chocolate, absolutely. But I feel that something like this is so satisfying. It really tastes like dessert. This one is spicy. I actually used the burlap and barrel. What was it? It was the smoked chipotle. You might want to, our Rouxbe live event library is absolutely wonderful resource. And I did an event a month or so ago with Ori Zohar, who is the co-founder and co-CEO of Burlap and Barrel. So, if I want something sweet and I want something that's chocolate, instead of having a small piece of chocolate, high percentage chocolate, which is fine, I feel like this is more satisfying. It's more substantial. And, I make this with oat milk or soy milk. There is some protein in there. And on this plate, I've scattered some cacao nibs, which is just roasted, chopped. It's the outer bit of the cacao bean, and it gives a nice crunch. And for people who are allergic to walnuts or stay away from walnuts for some reason, I like to use the cacao nibs. So that's something else we can do. I want to see. Okay, here we go. So last night I was thinking I bought a lot of apples, and I cooked them in water with spices. I used cinnamon. I used a piece of mace. I used some allspice and a drop of clove. And I actually did this in my pressure cooker, with the idea being that I was going to put this through my food mill. I don't peel my apples. I think it gives a nice color. And I didn't get to make the applesauce, but I looked at these this morning and I thought, how nice. To me, this would be a dessert. So let's build a dessert. Let's talk about granola. So this particular granola comes from Rancho La Puerta, where in Baja, Mexico, in Tecate, where I get to teach once a year. It's just a wonderful place, and they're very careful about food. So the ingredients are oatmeal, sunflower seeds, almonds, raisins, agave syrup, orange zest, ground cinnamon, ginger, and cardamom, delicious spices, no oil. But I always wonder, is something like this granola, or is it more like muesli? I think of granola as something that's a bit clumpy. And I have a recipe, I think in my book, More Great Good Dairy-Free Desserts, that has an oil-free granola that clumps because there's rice syrup, and that would make this clump. But if I sprinkle some granola on here and then maybe add, for me, some chocolate chips, I've got a dessert. To me, this is a dessert. So this is a healthful kind of granola or muesli. On the other hand, nothing wrong with it. So I had the thrill of going to 11 Madison Park last month. And some of you may know about 11 Madison Park. It's a very special occasion restaurant, 3 Michelin stars, and Chef Daniel Hom, who was known for his duck during the pandemic, during the lockdown. Excuse me, he went fully plant-based. And I will tell you that the meal was extremely exceptional. But every guest goes home this beautiful jar of granola in this nice, beautiful branded case. This tastes it's delicious. And I see coconut flakes. It tastes really sweet to me. And you can find the recipe for 11 Madison Park granola on, just do a Google search, and I think you can find the recipe for the Rancho La Puerta one as well. So to me, because it's sweeter, does this make dessert? I don't know. I'm teaching a dessert course. I've got known for vegan desserts, but I don't like very, very sweet desserts. That I don't. I want to see what else is here. This is silken tofu. This will make a nice dessert there is fat in tofu, but this is healthy fat, and we're not adding oil. So I put a recipe in the Q&A for a banana mango mousse that has no added fat whatsoever. And I just want to show you, I have a couple of, I did this. I don't usually do this, but here we go. So here's another not very sweet dessert or healthier dessert. That is orange tahini chocolate truffles. The chocolate is a high percentage. I use the 72% or 73.5 with fresh orange juice, orange zest, and tahini, which is very high in calcium. And that makes, and then coated with sesame seeds, that makes a very nice dessert. Now, in terms of lower fat, this is, everybody gets to do their thing. But in the course, we have a recipe for a gluten-free brownie sheet. It's based on a recipe in my book, Vegan Chocolate. And this recipe makes 24 small cupcakes, 24. There are 4 tablespoons of oil in the whole recipe. So for me, that is a lower fat dessert. In my layer cake, there is my torte, because I don't serve, that's a layer cake, but I prefer to serve a single layer torte. I think that's a way of reducing the fat by doing almost nothing. I think there is 1/4 cup of oil as well, and that will serve up to 14 people. So that's what I have to say for now. I want to start answering some of your questions. Okay, there I see at the top, it's my banana mango mousse, no sugar or fat added. And why is that? That's because dried fruit is your friend. Dried fruit is concentrated and the sweetness is really concentrated. And oftentimes I never add an additional sweetener when I'm doing that. Chef Char Nolan and I, we have a thing for prunes, which have been rebranded dried plums, but we really like that. So now Heidi is saying, may I replace chocolate with carob when called for? She cannot eat chocolate. Well, Heidi, cocoa powder and carob powder are very different. Cocoa powder is naturally tastes sweeter, so it's not going to be a one-to-one swap. You're going to have to do some experimentation. I find that roasting at a low temperature, I spread the carob powder out on a parchment lined sheet pan and roast it, and then you have to watch it, roast it low. The edges get a little clumpy, and then strain it. So you will, you can do that. Watch out for the carob confections you find in the marketplace, because they often have a lot of saturated fat and other junk in them. So go for it. Do some tests and feel free to let me know what happens. Alice is asking, can unsweetened applesauce be used in place of oil in my pumpkin spice muffins? Alice, I have not yet made them that way, so I can't give you a definitive answer, but I think there is a very small amount of added oil, and I think it would work. What I would do if I were you, and some of you have heard this over and over and over again, but it bears repeating, cut the recipe in half or even by 1/4 and try it and see. Applesauce and other fruit sauces act as moistening agents. There's some pectin in them and they bind, but it's different. So you're going to you very often get a very nice result. We have a whole unit on this in Essential Vegan Desserts, but you're not going to get the same crumb. So just expect it to be a little bit different, okay? Oh, this is interesting. Sheila T wrote, do you may recommend eating a dessert every day? I would love to, but not sure if I'd gain weight. So Sheila, if you're asking me to give you permission to eat dessert every day, I can't, I don't know you. I don't know what else you eat. I probably have a little bit of some kind of dessert every day, but they're smaller desserts and they vary. So I'm not sure if you'd gain weight. The bulk of my diet is grains and beans and greens. That's what I eat. And then I save room for a small piece of dessert. So Sheila, you've got to decide for yourself. Hi, Laura. This is Laura, who on Instagram is artfully plant-based. That's right, isn't it, Laura? And her work is exquisite. And Laura is a graduate of both Plant-Based Pro at Rouxbe and Essential Vegan Desserts. And she has an interesting comment. Laura is saying, I've enjoyed overripe bananas as a healthy sweetener until recently read there's a concern about an enzyme that interferes with healthy nutrient absorption. Is there an anecdote? You know, Laura, I see some of your questions ahead of time, and I tried to look that up, and honestly, I didn't see a problem. So I put a link in. The National Institutes of Health had something about the differences, certainly in the sweetness levels going from unripe bananas to super ripe bananas. I think, given that I know that you eat a super uber healthy diet, I don't think you have to worry too much, but I think we can all benefit from this. Quantity changes quality. My very first teacher and mentor, Dr. Anne-Marie Colbin, who wrote Food and Healing and founded the Natural Gourmet Institute, which is now at the Institute of Culinary Education, said that early on, and it made a big impression on me. So if you don't eat, quantity changes quality. So just let's moderate our foods and let's rotate them. Personally, I find overripe bananas, and again, what's overripe to Laura might not be to me, or vice versa. I don't like it. I find that a very ripe banana has a lot of sweetness, is great in a variety of desserts, but it gets to me too overripe and I taste something fizzy that I don't like. So Laura, we'll keep looking for that. Here we go. DM says, with current understanding of how important good fats are to our health, why the concern with no low fat as opposed to lower sweetener dessert? Well, that's kind of a two-part question, because we want to use, when we're talking about desserts, there's a difference between brown bread and a brownie, as my boss at my very first job said to me when I took almost all the sugar out of the recipe. He said, Costigan, you're making brownies, not brown bread. So yes, we want to moderate the amount of sweetener. I use just enough and a particular kind for a particular dessert so that what I'm making tastes like a dessert. The good fats, no fat, that's an ongoing, depending on where you are. I moderate the amount of oil, added fat in my diet. I am not a no oil person, as the Forks Over Knives and I believe the Culinary RX students are. Dr. Esselstyn, Rip Esselstyn, Plant Strong, no oil whatsoever, and has been found to prevent and reverse heart disease. So that's where that comes from. There is also thought that good fats, olive oil, avocado, nuts, are healthful. So the no oil people, and we're referring to these, this subset as whole food, plant-based, no oil, will, depending on their health concern, where they are, can get their fat from walnuts, for example, or occasional avocado. And that's the fat comes with the fiber, whereas olive oil, which is my favorite oil to use for baked goods, and I also like grapeseed oil for cakes, for baked goods, but I use only expeller pressed. Those are oils that are taken out of the fruit and the seed in this case. and there is no fiber. So this is, this is something that goes on. Just going to ask you to excuse me for 1 minute. I have to walk over here off camera for a second. I know if I was on TV, that would be a big no-no, but I'm asking your forgiveness. Okay. Maura is asking if I have any favorite uses for almond pulp that's left after making almond milk. There are a number of uses. I don't make my own almond milk anymore. On occasion, it's very easy to make, nut and seed milks. In my Vitamix, I don't have a special machine. I just do it, but I tend to use oat milk and soy milk. So almond pulp, I have dried it to make a gluten-free bread crumb. It actually was very nice. I've added it to a cracker recipe. Making energy bites. So I pulled this bag because I didn't have any bites left, but this is Soom Foods. They make the tahini that I like. The Soom sisters live in Philadelphia. And this is something that they're selling now, maple coconut, dates, tahini, oats, and coconut flakes. So it's healthy. That's really all it is. Dates, oats, tahini, coconut, sesame seeds, maple syrup, vanilla extract. Very healthful snack, and we can do that. But when I'm making something like that myself, I will put some almond pulp or other nut pulp in there. And also, I add it to smoothies. I add it back into smoothies. But I like to taste it because sometimes the skin of the almond can taste bitter or tannic because that's where the tannins are. So that's what I would say about that. And here, so I hope that helped you, Maura. Garine wrote, I tried a chocolate truffle hemp seed. It did not firm for me to ball them. Do you have a trick? Well, Garine, you would have to give me more information about what you used because I can't tell enough. I don't have enough information from that. Chocolate truffle hemp seed. So I'm thinking that you were using hemp milk to make the ganache for the truffle, but I'm not sure. But as a general rule, if your ganache doesn't set up firmly enough, just melt some more chocolate and add it in. All throughout the course, the recipes, and will say, even with the agar gel, take a tablespoon, put it in the refrigerator as a test before you go to complete your dessert. Let's see how firm or loose it is. The same thing with the ganache. If it didn't firm up enough, either you didn't keep it in the fridge long enough or there was too much liquid for the amount of chocolate. All right, I hope that helps. Allison is trying to find a sweet alternative to the chocolate and cookies she's always enjoyed with her coffee or tea. Well, Allison, I hope you saw some possibilities here that might be an alternative. And there are also some cookies that you can do with dried fruit and nuts and seeds that will have some crunch. You want to throw in some cacao nibs or some chopped dark chocolate into the mix, and it should taste like dessert. Or go back to this, dip some nice dried fruit into ganache, and that's something that I often have with tea and coffee. That's for sure. So let's see. Then I have Kathleen. What can I use for sweetness other than dates? The dates may turn my product, sugar cookies, blondies, too dark, and I don't want to use white sugar. Well, Kathleen, that's like $1 million question. There are, we go over the kinds of sweetness in a unit in Essential Vegan Desserts because there is no one size fits all. So there are liquid sweeteners and there are granulated sweeteners. And within those two categories, there are big differences. I don't use white sugar. White sugar is 99.9% pure. It's been bleached. Everything's been taken out of it, and it's the only edible food substance, meaning not poisonous, that we put into our mouth that doesn't need to be digested. It just goes in, hits your pancreas, depletes some of your B vitamins and so on. So I use, let's see, I'll show you a couple of kinds. This is coconut sugar, which I have in this container because coconut sugar has a large crystal and needs to be ground. This is going to turn, I use this in place of brown sugar, and it is going to turn your desserts. I mean, you're not going to see it in a chocolate cake. You're going to see it in a blondie, that it's darker and it has that molassesy taste. This is sucanat ground because, again, the crystal is very large. You see, I keep these sweeteners. I've got these edible silica gel because these sweeteners haven't been stripped and they're humectant. They hold moisture. So this is actually organic cane with all of the molasses intact. So that's another sweetener with a definite flavor, also like brown sugar, and color. And then I have here in my magic trick, all right. So this is what I use. This is cane sugar. This is cane sugar that has been lightly ground, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's definitely not white because some of the molasses that's inherent in the cane remains in this. To use a date paste, which I'm assuming is what you mean in a sugar cookie, it's going to be dark for sure. So I think, what you can do is maybe try a lighter colored fruit paste, like an mango. It's going to there's going to be a flavor attached to that. Sometimes you can't sub. The liquid sweeteners I use primarily are maple. Dark maple used to be called grade B. It's now grade A dark. I know where maple comes from. I use some date syrup, which is called Ceylon. I happen to love sorghum, which is from the sorghum plant. It's delicious. Both the date syrup and the sorghum have a very definite flavor. I like rice syrup, which tastes like honey to me, and I use a little bit of agave in very small quantities. They are not one for one. And the fact is, you really have to learn how to use these sweeteners when one is appropriate and not another. So I'm sorry I wasn't able to help you more. Kathleen wants to know, if I cored the apple, how did I maintain the round shape? Well, I cored the apple very carefully. First, I used a corer, that little device. And then I ran a small paring knife around it because I wanted a big empty space to stuff with the dried fruits and other goodies. And so it held its shape. Kathleen, what happens? Does yours fall apart? If yours falls, and then where's my apple? Okay. I took a little bit of skin of the apple peel off before I baked it. And that's what I did. Sometimes this really looks good. The roasted grapes just added something really nice to it. So if your apple is falling apart, maybe you're baking it too high or too long. That's the only thing I can think of. But thank you for that question. Miriam says, thanks, Fran. Always a pleasure listening to you. Inspiring. Well, thank you, Miriam. That's a really nice thing to hear. Shelly is asking, why don't you make your own local ingredient granola instead of using something from Mexico or a very special location? Shelly, I make my own granola. I certainly do. but I came home from this very special spa that is an honor to work at with their granola, and I wanted to show you. And I was gifted the other granola, and I don't have any of my own right now, but making granola is super easy. And in fact, my daughter-in-law, Linda, likes my no oil added granola so much that when I see her, they're mostly in LA, I give her whole bunches. So I agree with you. I think it's important to use local ingredients whenever we can. I have one more question from Yvonne. When I made date paste, I could not blend in the hard pieces of the skin. I used a blender. So Yvonne, you need to soak the dates first before you blend them. And I don't know if you did. I pit my dates. I wash them. I pit them. I look inside each one because I want to make sure there's no mold. Very rare to see black inside, but it does happen sometimes. So I don't want to eat that. And then I pour water over the dates and really let them soak. If I'm in a hurry, I might hot soak them, which means I would cook them on the stove in this liquid. I use ample liquid because to me, the liquid with, the soaking liquid, and this holds true for all dried fruits. The soaking liquid is like liquid gold. It's sweet and delicious. So I'm using a Vitamix, which is a high-speed blender, to make the date paste using my very soft dates, and I don't have a problem with the skins. Perhaps your dates weren't soft enough when you started, or if you were using a food processor or a blender that was less strong than the Vitamix type blenders, that might be an issue. I know that I can make prune paste, for example, when I soak the prunes long enough using just an immersion blender, and there are no skins involved there. So I think for you, it's a matter of getting them soft enough. And you know what? If anybody here is interested in date paste options, besides using water, I have soaked them in coffee. I happen to like the taste of coffee. If I'm going to use date paste that's been made with coffee, I make sure to use decaf coffee because I don't know who I'm serving. I start my day with coffee with a shot of espresso, and that's it for the day until the next day for me now, or I think I wouldn't be able to sleep. But I've soaked dates in lots of different things. It's just a matter of getting them soft enough. So I hope that will help. And Yvonne, if you want to tell me what it is that you're doing to make the date paste, send an email to me and I'll be happy to answer that question. Kathleen says, yes, the apples fall apart. I'll try a different coring device. Well, when I core them, as I said, I get a nice center because I want a place to be able to stuff these, but I make sure not to go all the way to the bottom. I want to keep the apple intact, Kathleen. So why don't you try that? And also watch them as they're baking, because it gets to a point where they will fall apart if they're overbaked. I mean, then it just becomes like applesauce. It's okay. But if you want it to look pretty like this, then, and then you can rewarm them if you want to serve it warm, then that's what I would suggest. Well, I have one more very, very short video to show you about fruit salad. So I'm going to ask Patrick to run that now.
Layers of mango paste, cashew vanilla cream, and fresh berries are the inspiration behind this delicious parfait. Top with diced mangoes, toasted granola, and fresh mint for a wholesome breakfast or light dessert.
Okay, so let's not forget fruit salad. I happen to love fruit. I really do. And there are so many ways to serve it. And I like to eat seasonal fruit salad. So right now it's going to be, pears, apples, cranberries, mandarin oranges. I love it. And if you macerate the fruit, macerating means adding some sugar to cut fruit, and then some of the liquid in the fruit comes on out, and then you have a sweet liquid. It isn't necessary to do that. Sometimes I'll add just a little bit of maple syrup and I get this lovely fruit. Can also, in Essential Vegan Desserts, we have an assignment for roasting fruit, which is amazing. Roasting it with a little bit of reduced, slightly sweetened balsamic, that tastes amazing. Or, as I said, the grapes that I cooked along with the baked apple taste, they're still intact, they're a little burst, but roasting fruit at a higher temperature brings up the sugars in the same way that it does with roasting vegetables. So it's a super, super option. Another low fat, no fat dessert before I finish up here is to make ice cream, right? Or nice cream, as we call it. So I have frozen, very ripe, but not overripe bananas in my freezer. That can be a base, and I can make chocolate. I can do strawberry. I can do blueberries. Use your frozen fruits, whatever you want. I know that people do this, make vegan ice cream this way, fruit-based ice cream, in a Vitamix blender. I prefer to do it in a food processor. I feel like it gives me more control. But recently I got a Ninja Creme, and I have to say, it's really good. So for example, I took a can of pineapple in its own juice. It was Edward and Sons Native Forest, nothing added. And I froze it, and I blended the pineapple and froze it and added lime. And it was like the most delicious sorbet. It was absolutely out of this world. Remember, we want to add flavors so that these lower fat desserts are delicious. And for me, the number one way to do it is add some citrus zest and citrus juice, lemon or lime. That's just wonderful. So I have two more questions that just came in. Miriam said we call it Macedonia here in Catalonia. Oh yeah, right, a Macedon of fruit. And it is delicious with fresh orange juice. And Diane K said, what can you do to sweeten fresh strawberries that won't add too many calories? Well, the first thing you can do is try to buy strawberries that taste sweet. And, I've had local strawberries that are like sugar, and then the ones in the supermarket, sometimes that look pretty and they're large, not so good. So you can add a little bit of maple syrup if you want, or roast them. In the course, we roast strawberries with this reduced balsamic. And it sounds funny because, like, roasting strawberries, are they going to turn to mush? They don't. They're just delicious. They're just delicious. And Diane, you can also try adding some herbs. I like adding herbs to my fruit, whether it's basil in the summertime, chopped rosemary, thyme, and just let them be. Just a tiny little bit of maple syrup, if that's okay, and let them macerate. And then they should be delicious. They should be delicious. I have been there where I've bought strawberries that looked so good, and I got them home and they didn't taste like anything. So, before you decide about sweetening your dessert, make sure to taste it. So I think I've got all the questions. I think we're just about there, but I want to show you something, assuming I can find it. I'm very proud of this. This is, many of you probably know, Rose Levy Barenbaum. And if you don't know, she is not vegan, but she is absolutely so specific about technique. And if you're going to be doing desserts, you need to learn some technique. And she actually, this is the 35th anniversary edition of this book, and she put Fran's vegan chocolate torte to live for in this book, which is really thrilling, and a ganache. So I want to show you. This is a picture of the vegan chocolate torte. So folks, whether you're vegan or curious or plant-based or just curious, everybody really needs to know how to make delicious vegan dessert today, because somebody who's allergic to eggs or dairy doesn't want to use conventional white sugar and so on. It's going to show up at the table. So let's keep learning together. And thank you very much for spending this hour with me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the questions. They were great. And I hope to see you in November. And remember to vote. Take care. Till next time.